Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be taking a look at a Bose wave radio plus 3 CD changer combo that's not working. So my coworker came to me and said that her mother had this Bose wave radio that she'd been using for years and years and years, and it had stopped working. And there was no pop or no electrical burning smell, no smoke. It just, every time she turned it on, it kind of gets into this boot loop. So she asked if I could take a look at it, and I said, well, sure, that sounds like fun. So in this video, we'll be taking it apart, figuring out what's wrong, and hopefully fixing it. So now I did have some audio problems when I recorded the first couple of bits of this video, so it's mostly me just talking about it, doing disassembly, testing it out. So let me recap that quickly, and then we'll play some sped up video of that, since I was talking through the whole thing and I didn't record the sound for some reason. So this is the Bose wave radio. I don't know the exact year it's from, but this is the model that has the CD player, and she also has the 3 CD changer attachment for it that plugs into the back. Power routes in through the CD changer and then passes through to the actual wave radio itself. What I found was that every time you turned it on, it would say please wait and show 12 o'clock because it wasn't saving the time from being unplugged. And then it would look like it got into normal operation, but as soon as you tried to change anything to either FM or AM or to the CD, it would just boot loop, go turn off, and then come back on, please wait, show you the clock, and then just do that over and over. So clearly something was wrong with it, and my guess was, probably there was some problem with maybe the amp. It seemed like the standby circuitry was working, since it did have the soft power, and it would turn on somewhat, but anytime you tried to run any sort of sound through it, that's when it would sort of boot loop. So I was guessing that maybe something was shorted, maybe there was too much power going through something and it was going into protection mode and the power supply was shutting off. So the goal here is to try to figure out exactly what the problem is and what we can do about it. So of course I did a little bit of research. I don't do a ton of research. Usually I kind of like to dive into these things and just sort of figure it out myself, but not really a Bose wave radio kind of repair technician. So did a little bit more research than I usually do on these kinds of things. And I found that they too suffer from failing capacitors, just like, vintage Macintoshes do. So that seemed like a pretty simple thing to try. So learning that they have this bad capacitor issue, I busted out the capacitor tester and I started poking around at some of these capacitors. And boy, were they all bad. I saw ESR values as high as 100, maybe even a little higher. I don't quite remember, but I don't think there was a single capacitor that had an ESR under 5. And my guess is because this thing does have soft power, that these capacitors probably have just been running nonstop for the past 15 to 20 years, and that's just their usable service life is over. So they just got to go, got to replace the capacitors. So that's where I'm going to start. And fortunately, that's where I started recording sound. So the first thing I did was take everything apart, get the speakers out, get the big, I think it's a transformer. There's a big thing in there with wires wrapped around it, but it's sealed. I think it's a transformer. I don't think it's anything to do with electromagnetic interference reduction, although that's kind of what it looks like. I'm not really sure what it is, but without it plugged in, the radio won't boot, so it is important, whatever it is. So anyway, let's get these two boards out and let's start trying to replace some of these capacitors. All right, so I've got both of the boards from the wave radio out. I've still got this big heatsink connected on this one. I got to figure out how to get that off to get those capacitors. Probably going to need to get that off. I've got an idea, but we'll see when we get there. So I'm going to start with this board. It's just got a handle on it. So I went out to DigiKey. Got a whole bunch of capacitors. Let's be replacing them. The only trouble I had is there was, I think it was 1 microfarad 60 volt capacitors, and I could only find 50 volt, even on like Mouser or just about any place. 50 volt was the highest I could find. So hopefully those don't go pop when I install them. And I guess
So these are all electrolytics on the board, and some of the replacement values that I could find on DigiKey and Mouser were only tantalum caps, which I don't think is going to matter, but we'll do what we can. So I'm just going to start recapping these. The smaller board of the two's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 caps on it. And I'm guessing since this is a more modern board that it's lead-free solder, which means it takes a lot more heat to get these things off. Typically, with vintage stuff, you can do the grip and twist method, but with these capacitors that aren't leaking, they're just getting old and not having good capacitance. You can't rip them because that'll rip the pads off. So we'll need to desolder these. I'm going to start by trying the old soldering iron. I might put some fresh solder on, see if I can get that off that way. If that doesn't work, then I'll use the hotter rework station. This board's pretty okay. There's not too much plastic on it. There's a connector here that I have to be careful of, but for the most part, I think the hotter rework should be pretty okay. There's a connector here too, so it could be a little tricky. I've got Kapton tape though if we need it, but let's just jump right into it. Alright, so let's start with this one. This is a 220 16 volt. I don't know if the board is marked with negatives. Not anywhere I can see. I don't see any screen printing, so I'll need to pay special attention on which way positive and negative goes before I take them off. So I'm just going to grab a picture quick. Alright, so this is a 220 16 volt, so I've got some 220 16 volt here. Oh, and it comes with a humidity indicator. Alright. I guess that's why there was a desiccant in there. So what does this tell us? Bake parts if 60% is not blue. Bake parts if 10% is not blue and 5% is pink. Do not use this card. Do not put this card into a bag if 60% is pink. I guess we're good on humidity. That's cool. I've not seen one of those before. Alright, let's try to get this capacitor off. See how that goes for us. Of course, tweezers are never nearby when you need them. Where are my tweezers? I have so many pairs of tweezers. They all just always disappear. Here's a pair. These are straight tweezers. I prefer the angled ones. Alright, so I'm going to heat up this side here. And this is no flux. Let's see if we can heat it up enough to lift it off. I think we did. And we'll do this side. And just kind of work it back and forth. Alright, well the solder is flowing very nicely. Almost too nicely. So I'm going to use some solder braid, see if we can actually just wick that out of here. Might need to hit it with some flux to do that. Alright, we'll just dab on a bit of flux here. Okay, so I think we got that side up for sure. This side's being a little bit more problematic. And you don't want to put too much force on these because it will rip the pads right off. Okay, I got one side off. And that's both sides. And our pads are still fully intact. So now we can just apply a new one. And make sure negative's going the same way as it was before. And we'll put some fresh solder on the pads. And give it a quick wiggle test. Yeah, that one's on there solid. So that's one out of however many. Alright, so for these ones in here, I think I'm going to go with the hot air method. I think it's just going to be a little bit easier, so just going to hit them all with a little bit of flux to start with. And I've got a picture on my phone of the polarity, the values, so we should be in pretty good shape. I don't see any real worrisome components near any of them. There's no plastic. I'm going to remove this ribbon cable. So you don't want to damage that. Alright, so we'll get our hot air going here. I don't have the flow super high. I don't want to blow components off the board, but I do want to heat them up. I gotta increase my temp. I'm only at 200C. Let's start with 375. Alright, so that's one. Two. Three. 4. 5. And 6. So those came off super easy with the hot air. Now I just got to put some replacements on. So there's my picture I have of this section, so I know the layout and values. Just got to keep my orientation correct and we should be good. So we're going to start with a 100 microfarad 16 volt here, replacing a 6 volt. I could use hot air to resolder these, but I think I'm going to try the soldering iron here. At least for this big one. Maybe the smaller ones will be easier with hot air. So that's one. Alright, so I did decide to use hot air to reattach these capacitors. The ones that I've got here are a little bigger than the ones that I took off, so I can't actually get to the pads very easily. But if I just heat the whole area up, then I can get them connected. So let me show you that. So I've got this one and this one attached, and this one of course, so I'm doing these two next. give that a second to cool down. I did not give it a long enough second. The nice thing about using hot air is that the components kind of seat themselves once they're lined up right, so you don't have to fuss with it too much. I'm just being patient with this one. Alright. So there we go, this one's connected. And this one's connected. So I got 2 more to go in here. So we'll finish this up, then we'll get back to this next section. Alright, so we got this section all done. So now I'm going to flip it up here and do this section. I need to cover this connector up though, because I don't want to melt this plastic connector. That would be bad. So to protect it, we're going to use Kapton tape. Now the big problem here is that it's really close to some of those capacitors. I need to be careful. Not only use Kapton tape, but to try to blow the heat away from this connector. That's probably fine. And like I said, I'll just be careful to blow the heat away from it. So first I want to check to make sure I have a good picture of this area. And I do. So let's go ahead and heat this up. Get some flux on there first. As we all know, flux makes the solder flow. Alright, and then we'll just scoop all those capacitors off. Alright, easy enough. And then what I did last time I didn't show is I just went through and I retouched any of the pads that needed a little extra solder, just to make sure we've got good solder on all the pads. Everything looks good, I think. A little more here wouldn't hurt. And then we just need to reinstall our new capacitors based on the picture. Alright, so we got this board fully recapped. All these caps here, this one, didn't forget this one, this group here, and these ones here. I did check the bottom, nothing there. We'll go ahead and put the tin can back on. Alright, so I've got everything recapped. I've got enough stuff hooked up, I believe, so we can test. We've got the control board, the amplifier, this big transformer, I guess is what it is, and the display panel. So let me go ahead and plug it in, and hopefully nothing explodes. Okay, it's plugged in. Oh, we got some signal here. Please wait. Okay. So now if I hit FM, aha. Well, there we go. It didn't boot loop or whatever it was doing. I don't have speakers hooked up currently, but it looks like that's working. I don't have the CD drive hooked up either. Alright, let's unplug it and hook up the CD drive and the speakers and see if we get sound out of it. Alright, so let's hook the speakers up first. And these speakers, the foam is just like disintegrating on them. Hopefully it's not conductive. I'm sure it's going to be all over the board here shortly. And I'll do my best to clean it off, but it's kind of just falling apart. Okay, we'll flip that over here. Now let's hook up the CD drive. So it's got two cables that need to get plugged in. Let's start with this one. I think it's going to be the harder one to do. Okay, and then this one. Alright. So then we can flip the speakers back over here, I guess. Kind of just sit on top for now. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Adjust the camera downward a bit. Alright, so let's do FM. Well, when I say FM, it goes to AM first, but it's the FM AM button. But that's working. I hear some static. Great. Let's try an FM station here. Seek. Yeah. Sounds like it's working. Cool. So I think all we need to do then is just reassemble. So let's go ahead and do that next. Now we need to test out the CD drive too. I'll grab a CD here. Alright, so here's a disc I burned in July of 2000. It's good and scratched, so this will be a good test. Let's give it a try here. Oops. Get back up, you. And it's playing. And we're going to get a copyright strike if I don't mute it. Let's go ahead and skip, yeah. Some Beastie Boys. Okay. Well, it seems like that's working. Disturbed. Okay, cool. Alright, so yeah, CD drive works too. So I think we're ready for reassembly. So let's see if it still works now that it's all together. Okay, that's a good sign. Hit FM. Are there any presets that it remembers? No, seek. Okay. Radio works. Let's try that CD again. Yep, that works. So we'll eject that. Now the question is, we've got this guy working. Is this thing suffering from capacitor failure as well? Let's find out. How's this mount on here? There we go. Alright, so plug in connection, mains, then we plug mains into the bottom unit. That was a lot of noise. Let's see if it can take a disc. No. Oh, it was trying. Disk error? Yeah, okay, I know. Can you read disk 4? How do we get to disk 4? Oh, it was playing. Yep, okay, that works. Just loud. Let's try disk 3. This thing makes a heck of a racket, but it works. And let's try disk 2. Jeez. Alright, looks good. Alright, so I think we can call the Bose Wave music system plus CD player fixed. So it was just a simple matter of recapping. And I did look online, and it's a pretty known issue with these things. It's not that any of these capacitors leaked, at least not that I could see, and I didn't get any of that leaked fishy capacitor smell on any of them. It's just that they've been, I guess, in continual operation for 15 or 20 years, or however old this thing is. And the ESR on them just gets way out of spec and causes some problems. So, yeah, like I said, I'd measured the ESR of just about every cap on here, and there was just crazy ESR levels on them. So, if you've got one of these and you're having problems with it, probably just needs a recap. Both the control board and the amplifier power board seemed like they needed it because they had all kinds of caps that were bad. One thing I did do on the amplifier board, there was a 60 volt 1 microfarad capacitor, I think. And for the life of me, I could not find a replacement at 60 volts or higher, even 100 volts. So I substituted a 50 volt 1 microfarad capacitor. I was worried that it might, cause some issues. Maybe if you crank this thing up all the way, it will cause issues, but so far so good. So I don't know what to say about that. If you find a 50 volt 1 microfarad capacitor somewhere, just get it. But if you can get the 60 volt, probably best to use what they had originally spec'd in there. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next video.
Hi guys! Make sure to like and subscribe, and watch more of our videos later.